Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be looking at how you can connect Firebase to a React app, and then we're going to start doing some CRUD operations. So we'll show you how to create an item, delete an item, that sort of thing. And for this project, we're just going to be doing creating a user, deleting a user, as well as being able to show the users on the screen. So let's get right into this. So if we come over here, I just have a basic Expo app running right now. If you want to come over to the Expo docs, you can see to get that up and running, we're just going to run npx create Expo app and then whatever you want to name it right here. And that will get you basically to the stage I'm at right now. The other thing we got going here is we're going to have Firebase because that's what we're going to be using that for our backend here. So if you don't know about Firebase, basically it's just going to be a backend as a service for us. So it's going to handle all our database and everything as well. So the first thing we got to do is come over to Firebase. You can see the URL up here, firebase.google.com. You're going to sign up and then you're going to sign in and go to your console over here. So you can see if we come over here, I got some apps using this right now. We're going to come in, we want to create a new project. So we'll just say Firebase database for this, like that, and we're going to continue. And then you can either use Google Analytics for this or not. For us, we don't need any of that right now, but if you're going to run something in production, you might want those. So go ahead and add those, and then this will create the project for us. All right, and then we can go ahead and continue here, and it will take us over to our project. So you can see in here, there's some different stuff you can do. Authentication, we're going to be using Firestore right now. That's going to be what we're using for our database right there. And then you come over here, you get web, iOS, Android. We're actually going to be using web, even though it's a React Native. So you could actually use this on a regular React project as well. It doesn't have to be React Native. Basically, all the code will work exactly the same. So we're going to name this. So we're just going to say Firebase database again. And you can host it if you want here. We're not going to do that right now. So go ahead and register the app. All right, now this is the important stuff. The first thing you're going to want to do, I think I've actually already done this, but you're going to run npm install. So come over here, open up a terminal window, and run npm install Firebase. Or we're using yarn, so you can say yarn add Firebase like that as well. I've already done that. So if you come over to your package.json after, you should have Firebase here. And this is really the only thing we're going to be using for the project, so no other dependencies are going to be necessary. I don't believe, unless I'm wrong on that, but for now anyways, that should be good. So once you've done that, we're going to come in and we're going to create a little config file here and add all this here. So you're going to want to copy this over here, and then we can continue on to the console. Now, from here, we can start actually coding some of this up. So the first thing we're going to want to do here is to add a few little directories and stuff. So let's come in to our main directory. Let's add a source folder. So src like this. And then inside here, we're going to have a couple things. We're just going to have, we'll do everything on our app. So we're not going to have other screens. So we're not going to have any routing or anything. So inside of this source folder, we'll have a couple things. One will just be a config folder. So like that. And then we'll also have a new folder and we'll call it components, just like that. Now, we won't have any screens or anything. Normally you'd have a screens folder with all your various screens, but we'll do everything in this app.js, so no need for any of that. So inside of this config, let's add a new file and we'll call it firebase.js, just like this. And this is where we're going to use that config that we just had over there. So let's come in and we'll just paste that in to start with. So this is what we copied over. Now, if you're going to run anything in production, make sure you move all of these API keys and stuff outside of this into a environmental variable file, so a .env, and then you'll bring those in here. For now, I'm going to delete this right after this, so I'm just going to leave them in here so we don't waste time doing anything like that. So there's a couple things we're going to want to do also in here. So we're going to import something here called get firestore, and that's going to be coming from Firebase slash firestore, I believe, like that. Okay, so we're going to bring this in because we're going to use that in a second. We're going to leave our Firebase config as is. Then we're going to come down below here after we initialize the firestore config like that. And we're going to say export, and we're going to say const, and we're just going to export our database right here so we have access to it other places in this app, and we'll just say get firestore like that. And of course, that needs to be equal to get firestore like that. So now we're exporting this database, and we can access it other places within our app like that. All right, so let's do a little more setup on our firestore right here. So let's come back over to our console right here, and we're going to look into this cloud firestore right here. And we're going to go ahead and create a database like this. And there's a couple ways that we can do this. We can start in production mode or start in test mode. We have to secure our database if we're in production mode here. We are just going to go start mode for here just to make this simpler. Then we're going to go ahead and select a region here. So you want to get a region closer to your actual location or where your users will be, because that'll shorten the latency. So we'll go US West right here. That seems good. And then we'll create it right there. All right, now let's actually make this a little bit bigger right here. Okay, so this is our database. So we can start by creating something called a collection right here, and we're just going to call it users like this, and then we can go next here. All right, so now we can create a couple fields. So we'll just say username like this. So we'll come create a username. It's going to be of type string, and we'll just say Darwin for this one like this, and we can go ahead and save that. So now we have this username right here. And we could add something else on top of that also. But for now, that should be good. Okay, so we got our users with our username like this. Now let's come back. I think that's all we need. If you need access to this Firestore database, it's going to be right up here too. So that should be good. All right, so let's go ahead and try to show this data that we just created right here. So let's come back over. And we are going to go back into our app.js right now. Right now you can see on the right here, I'm just showing this fire spelt wrong base example here. There we go. And if you don't know how to run this, you're just going to run yarn start in your terminal. Yarn start like this, and then it'll bring up, you can choose what kind of emulator you want to use. I'm just using iOS. We're going to use a couple pieces or a couple hooks right here. So we'll say use state we're going to bring in, and we're going to also be using use effect like this. So that's good. We're going to want to use, we'll also bring in a flat list because we want to display our users like this. It's actually flat list, capital L like that. And then we're going to also bring in right here, we're going to import, and we are going to use collection. This is going to be from Firestore. We are going to say on snapshot, and I'll explain what that does in a second. And I think that is going to be about it for this, but we will see. And that's going to be from Firebase / Firestore. Then we're going to want to bring in our database here. So we'll say a DB like that. And that's going to be from, and we have it in our, where is it? .src / components or / config / Firebase. Okay. We're going to bring in a couple other components after when we create them, but for now that sounds pretty good. We'll come in here and let's create some state. So we're going to go const, and we're going to say, we'll call it people here, and set people. This is going to be our users like this, and we will set that equal to use state, and we'll just set that to an empty array. And then our other piece of state here, we're going to say is just we're going to have a loading state here. And that's going to be equal to use state also. And that's going to start as false like that. Okay, so we got our people state, our loading state. Next thing we want to do is come in here and set up some use effect right here. So we'll get a little room here and we'll say use effect, and then that is going to be an arrow function. And then inside of here, we're going to set our loading, and we'll set that to true like this. True, not true. Okay, and then below that, we're going to get the actual user's query that we're going to set to our people state right here. So this is where we're going to start bringing in that collection. So we'll say const, and we will say user's query like that. And then that's going to be equal to collection. And that is going to be coming from our database, which we're bringing in right here. So that's the first argument you're going to pass into the collection for Firebase here. Call collection, pass in the actual database where the data is going to come from. That is looking good. And then the second thing is the collection name. So that for us was users, if you remember. So that is going to get our collection like that. Now we're going to call this on snapshot right here that we brought in. And this is going to update every time a change is made to the database. So when we go ahead and we're gonna add a user, or you delete a user, which we're gonna do in this video, when we go ahead and do that, it will update automatically, and it'll be a real-time database, which is kind of the whole point of this whole thing. So let's say on snapshot, and then we're gonna pass in that user's query. Okay, and then our second argument here is gonna be a function, and we're gonna pass in snapshot like that. And then we're going to go arrow function here, and inside here we're going to create a variable. So we're going to say let users list like this. We're going to call it that, and we'll just set that to an empty array to start. And then we are going to map over everything that's coming back here from this snapshot. So we'll say snapshot, and we'll say .docs. These are going to get the documents in the snapshot, and we're going to map over all of those. So we'll say .map. And we're going to pass in a doc like that, a single doc. And then here we're going to say users list like that. And we're going to push, so .push onto that. And we're going to spread in the docs.data. So this docs.data here, sorry, give you a little more room. So we're going to spread on this doc here, all the data coming from that. So for us, that's just going to be our username and stuff. I guess that's all we have right now. So we'll call doc.data rather. We're spreading that, and then we're going to pass in, we want to add an ID to this because right now we have no ID. So we're going to have an ID, and that is going to be doc.id like this. Okay, and then once we have this here, we're going to come in below here, and all we want to do is set this to our people state here. So set people, and then we're going to say users list like this. And then finally, the final step of this is we're going to set loading here, and we'll set that to false. So we're setting our loading to true right here, and then finally finishing it off, setting it to false right now. The other thing we don't want to forget right here is the second element here. We're going to set an empty array right here. So this will only run once on load, basically. Okay, so again, just to go over this, we're getting our collection from our database, which is our users collection. Then we're calling this on snapshot here, passing in the actual query, which we create right here that we want. And then we're mapping over all the items that we are getting. That's this docs right now. And we're pushing them onto this user list and adding an ID, basically. So that is how we are going to do that. Now, the next thing we want to do, let's just get rid of this real quick so we have a little more room. We want to use this flat list to actually display the various users on the screen. So in order to do that, we're going to bring that in here. So let's go flat list here like that. And then for a flat list, you're going to pass in some data right here. And for us, that's going to be people. And then we're going to want to pass in a render item like this. And we're going to create that in a sec. We'll call it render item. And then finally, we're going to call pass in a key extractor. So we're going to pass in this key extractor here, and we're going to say item here, and we'll pass in a item.id like that. Okay, so that will handle the various keys for us. Now this is broken because we didn't close this off, so let's close that off like this. Go ahead and save that. Now, oh, we brought in our DB up here. That should have been a slash like that, or a dot slash, I guess. All right, so now we're getting this render item because we haven't actually shown this yet. All right, so now we have to create this render item right here. So if we come above here, we can say const and we'll say render item like that. And we will just do a arrow function here, and we'll pass in the item. And then we will go like this, and we're gonna return here a view like this, and inside the view we'll just have a text like this, and inside the text we're just gonna pass in item dot, we call it username, which is our attribute there. Okay, so that is all we need to do right now. All right, so let's actually see. We're just gonna console.log, and we will log out the set people, see if we're actually bringing anything, or people, and see if we're bringing anything in here. And if we open this up, we don't need that. Okay, so we are bringing in something here, which is good. All right, so that is coming in. We can close this down. So it looks like we just need to add a little bit more margin. Just for now, let's just add a margin top instead of playing with too much CSS stuff, and we'll just say 50 like that. Now we can see we got this Firebase. It's a list here. You can see we can drag it, and then just our title up there. So that might be a little small, but hopefully you can see that our actual items are coming through. Okay, so that is how you can show some data in Firebase. Now let's go ahead and actually be able to create and delete. So let's come in here, we'll go create a new file here, and we'll just call it, we'll just say create user.js like that, and then we'll do a delete after. So let's come in here, let's scaffold this up so we can actually, we'll get rid of this console.log. And we can just copy everything in here just to kind of get a base for this. Then we can paste that. Let's get a little more room here. And let's come up to the top and see what we'll need for this. So we'll use the state. I don't think we'll need use effect here, so we can get rid of that. We'll use the style sheet. We don't need a flat list. Get rid of that. We'll use a view style sheet, and then we'll use also a text input, and we'll also use a pressable as a button here. Then we're just going to add something called add doc here like this from Firestore, and this, like the name says, is going to allow us to add a document. All right, so let's rename this to create user like that. We do not need any of this loading or anything. We can get rid of that. This will just change to user. Our naming convention here is not great. I just realized in here. Set user. Probably should just stick with user instead of people. I don't know why I did that, but oh well, you know, c'est la vie. So then we'll go user name, which we're going to add here, and that will be an empty string. Okay, and we can get rid of this use effect. We're not going to use that at all. We don't need this render item here. Cache that. Boom. Now let's go ahead and create our actual function here, which we're going to add a user. We're going to use to add a user. So we'll just call it add user like this, and we'll go const, and we will say user db. We'll go user db like this, and that's going to be equal, and this is again same thing, get the collection like this, and same thing again, you're going to pass in the db that we're bringing in up top, and then again the users, which is the name of it. And then now we're going to use this add doc like that, and we're going to pass in the user db that we created, and then we're going to pass in a object here, and we're just going to say username, and that is going to be user.name. That is what we're going to use for that. Now, the reason I added this as an object is we might want to in the future, add something like a phone or something, anything you might want up there. Right now, we're just trying to show you how this works, but you could also not pass in an object and just pass in the username like that, and then just pass in user down here. Anyways, that's how we're going to do it, make it a little more extensible. And now let's do a little bit of markup here. So we'll get rid of all this in here. We'll leave this stuff right now. So the first thing that we are going to have in here is going to be a text input. So we need some way to enter the data, just like that. And then inside here, we'll just have a placeholder, and we'll just say name or username. Then we're going to have the value of it, and that's going to be equal to user. Value is going to be user.username. Then we'll come down and we will say on change text here, and that we're going to pass in here. And we're going to take the text from in here that we're passing in, and we're going to set it to the user here, and we're going to spread in the user, and we will say username, and that's going to be equal to the text that is typed in there. Again, this spread syntax and stuff isn't going to be necessary unless you have this object here, but I just want to make it a little more extensible, so that is why I'm doing that. Okay, then we can close that off right like that. And then finally, below here, we're going to want another a way to submit the text. So let's add a button. That's where this pressable is going to come in here. And we'll say on press. And that is going to be equal to the function we created above called add user, like that. So we can close that off. And then inside here, we're going to go text. And we will just say create user, like that. Now that should be all we need to do. So we can go ahead and come back over to our app.js like that. And we can actually bring this in. So let's come here, and we're just going to say import, and we will say create user. And that's going to come from /source/ components / create user, like that. Oh, and this is we didn't import this, we didn't switch this over, right? So come back over to your create user, and this isn't source, this is .. /config. I think that's right. All right, so that's back to looking good. And then we want to come down, and we will just add this right above our flat list. So we can come in and we can say create user, like that, and close that off. And now we get this sweet create user with this input here. Not the most styled right now, but we can type something in here, come over and create the user, and something breaks. Yes, we said user.name right here. This should be username. That might be it. Oh, looks like we spelled this obviously wrong. Don't know how to spell here. Username, like that. Come in, create this user, and now you can see it automatically updates like this. We're not clearing this or anything, but we can come in and create a new one here and create it. And again, right away it pops up. So you can see the real-time nature of Firebase, which is very nice when you're doing kind of these CRUD operations like this. All right, so that is how you create a user. Now let's go ahead and create one more where we'll show you how to delete a user. So let's say delete user.js, and we can take create user, come in, copy this over. We'll come in here. We'll rename this to delete user. And we don't need any of this state here from use states. We don't need the style sheet, I guess, right here. We're going to get rid of anything in here. And instead of this add function here, we can get rid of the state actually too. Get rid of this, clean some of this up. We're going to use pressable. We'll use a text. We'll use a view. I think that's all. So we don't need this text input here. And then instead of collection, we don't need that anymore, but we do need something called delete doc. And then also instead of add doc here, the other thing we got to bring in is just this something called doc right here. All right, now we want to call this delete user like that. We're going to come in, instead of getting this user DB, we'll just say user like this. And instead of collection, we're just going to say doc like that. And then we're going to pass in the database, which we're bringing in again from firestore here. We're going to say users. And then finally, we want to pass in the actual ID of the user to delete. So we got to remember to bring that in up top so we can destructure this and just say ID. So we're going to pass in the actual ID of the user that we want to delete like that. And then it's super easy to delete a doc. All you're going to say is delete doc, and that's that function we just brought in. And we'll pass in the actual user, which we're getting from this ID like that. Okay, let's do our markup right here. So all we're going to want is a pressable like that, and we'll have an on press. Okay, and we'll just say delete user. Boom. Easy. And then actually that's going to be our button, so we want to open that up here, and we'll say pressable like this. Actually, we need to, that'll be our closing tag like that. And then inside here, we're just going to do a text here, and let's just do a X, because that's how you show you want to delete something, just with an X. All right, let's come back over to our app, and we'll bring this in. And we're going to want to add this beside our username here to show what we want to actually delete. So we'll say delete a user, and that'll auto bring that in. And then we want to actually pass in the ID of the item. So we'll say item or ID equals item.id like that. Go ahead and save that. Make sure you bring this in here. Delete users being brought in. So that's good. Oh, we forgot to get rid of this on here because we're not actually bringing in styles here. All right, so you can see right now this is just below. So if we want to delete something, hopefully this will show up. Yep, we can delete it. We can delete it like that. We can come back over, add another one, create a user. The X is right there. All right, so that is how you can do some of the CRUD operations you might need for a Firebase app. Again, this will work in React too. So you basically the code will be exactly the same in terms of the actual actions that we're doing with Snapshot. All this will be the same. All the create and add exactly the same for regular React, but works quite nicely. You can see the real-time nature is very nice. Going and creating and deleting right away is kind of cool. So that is kind of a nice introduction to how Firebase works and how you can do some of the CRUD operations. Yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.